Should I paste that?
Yes, please, Anuj, if you don't mind. Okay. All right, we are preparing to start the streaming. And here we go. And we're live on Facebook. Welcome everyone to our screening and discussion of Antigone Now from the UC Davis Theater and Dance Department, a collaborative production directed by some fabulous people that I will allow to introduce themselves. So we want to welcome you all, whether on Facebook Live, thank you for joining us, and it's great to have you all, be it virtually. Welcome. So I'll start. I'm Hannah Adamy. I'm here in Davis, California, which is the land of the Patwin tribe and the Yocha Dehe Wintu Nation. And I am here as a facilitator for the discussion and an eager participant, and that is my relationship to the production. Tori, would you go next?
Pleasure. My name is Tori Brickowski. I'm a 7th year anthropology department graduate student, and it is also my pleasure to be here on the traditional land of the Patwin people, seeking refuge in the land. And my relationship to the production is just as a lover of the story and of the film. So it's a pleasure to be here. Professor Kemp, would you like to go next? Could you please unmute yourself so we can hear you?
I am Margaret Laurena Kemp, and I am co-director of this project. I'm associate professor, theater and dance, and head of acting at UC Davis. Sinead.
Hello, I'm Sinead Rushe. I'm a theatre director and co-director of this project. I'm originally from Northern Ireland, so I have an affinity with the Seamus Heaney translation that we're working with today, and I'm based in London, UK. Veronica?
Hi, I'm Veronica Díaz-Muñíz. I'm a Chilean artist, and I am a first-year MFA student in UC Davis. I am in Davis right now, but I'm originally from Chile, as I said. And my relation to the production is I'm a cast member. Olivia?
Hi, my name is Olivia Coca, and I am a part of the AntigoneNOW cast. I just recently graduated at UC Davis, and I am currently in Saratoga in the Bay Area.
Hi, I'm Arden Siadek. I'm also a cast member of Antigone, and I am currently at home in Los Angeles. And I'm also a first-year undergraduate student at UC Davis.
And Xinyi, would you go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Xinyi. I'm a third-year nutrition and theater minor, nutrition major and theater minor student at UC Davis. And I'm from China, and I'm currently in Moorpark, South California. And I am the stage manager for Antigone. Thank you.
And I believe, Joseph, you're our last panelist.
Hi, I'm Joseph Fletcher. I'm a staff member at the university, Department of Theater, and I was the production supervisor on this project. Oh, and I'm in Davis.
Thank you all for those introductions. And I believe these are the sounds of gathering, right? Our introductions are coming to this space together. And as we settle into virtual space, we know we come to mourn. And as this piece is an invitation to mourn for our brother. And I would like to ask all of us assembled here and out there on Facebook to mourn together and to be in the space together, and to hold together. So can we listen to this invitation to mourn? And I would like to encourage you all, as we move to screening this production, to put on your headphones, because there's some fabulous sound that should be close and snug to your ears. And with that, I would like to move us towards to watching this together. I will be streaming it here on my Zoom account, but if the quality does not do it justice, then we will be pasting a link to the video, which is on Vimeo, in the chat on Facebook Live. So do keep an eye out for that. And with that, I will invite you all to put on those headphones and settle in for Antigone Now. Welcome back, everyone. I'll give a moment for our Facebook folks to end their screening. And as we come back, I would like to, Tori, if you would move us into the discussion portion of our time together, I'd be grateful, as we talk together about what we just watched.
Thank you, Hannah, for facilitating this beginning. To everybody, welcome. Again, my name is Tori. I'm an anthropologist of, well, I do study burial practices. And so one of the things that I was really struck by in both viewings, or all viewings that I've done of this piece, is the opening up of the performance with a song that I don't recognize, and then the work of the earth that in my cultural and ancestral traditions I think I've forgotten. And so I wonder if we might begin there, and with, in particular, the scenes I'm remembering of figures engaging with earth in various ways. There was a burial, there was a gathering, there was a writing. And if you could speak to us, those of you that would like to contribute to the conversation, about your process of getting to those scenes. I know there was an assignment to think about mourning. So how, as individual actors and as cast members and creative designers, did you get to these scenes that deal with the question of burial in such visceral, auditory, embodied ways? Perhaps whoever would like to share can just share and unmute yourself.
You're on mute, Margaret.
I was saying I would like to start and then ask everyone else to join as well. Working, if anybody's familiar with my practice or seen any of my work, I've been working with this idea of dirt and mourning and moving dirt, particularly by hand, as a way of thinking about burial. And when I started to think about this as an online experience, one of the things that I thought about, because I did another piece where I invited the audience to record a durational performance. It was 5.5 hours of moving the dirt with my hands, thinking through the idea of burial and authorship. So it was something that was already in my my mind and in my practice. And now I'm going to ask Sinead to talk a little bit more.
I mean, I would say it's an image that's in the play very strongly. There's the image of a whirlwind, the moment that Antigone goes out to bury the body illegally, or to do rites, to do the funeral rites. There's a dust storm and a sense of the earth moving, and so I feel like the image is integral to the play, and there's this sense of the natural elements beyond just human beings. There's a kind of sense of the natural world that feels very strong in the play. So it felt very important that especially in this disembodied existence that we're in currently in lockdown, that the natural world somehow really have a presence. And I would say, once again, going back to the Seamus Heaney text, you know, was an Irish poet, and this idea of interring the body deeply into the earth, and is fundamental to an Irish sensibility of putting someone to rest, and that feels very significant at the heart of this text. And maybe invite Veronica to speak a little bit about the song and the earth.
Can I say a teeny bit before that? Only because I did want to point out that both in my class and in our approach with working with the actors, one of the things we did is gave them a list of things to investigate from their own culture. And in my classes specifically, I asked students to look at mourning and how they approach mourning from their own culture. And this was also one of the provocations that we gave to the entire cast. So we had a folder full of cultural information that each cast member could share with one another, so that we could all get to know each other in that part of the process. And Veronica?
Yeah, the thing that Margaret just mentioned was really important, because all the cast members, we researched about burial and mourning in our own backgrounds. So that was pretty interesting. I'm from Chile, so my country has a special relationship with bodies, and bodies that cannot be buried because of the missing bodies we still have. And especially in the Mapuche folk tradition, it's really interesting to think about death and burial as a way of the body can be part again of the earth and ground, you know, like Mapuche means people from the earth. So to me it was really important, and the song you just listened, it's actually a lullaby, and to me it was related to like what would Antigone do with her brother, how would her invite him and his dead body to rest. And I think that was really interesting in artistic terms, to keep researching and keep exploring about our relationship with the ground, and not the ground also like dirt. And I also understand that burying a brother by yourself and like taking all this dirt in order to put him to rest requires a lot of physical effort. And I also experimented that when I was like shooting. I was like, well, like burying a brother should be like something really difficult, I think, and like physically and emotionally difficult. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too diffuse. I'm sorry.
No, I think that that definitely speaks to what I saw in that image, the process, the effort of tilling. It almost looks like a tilling of the earth, getting it ready for something new potentially too, was something I read into it. Would anyone else like to speak to this idea of the ground and earth, and of that process of burial? And Regina has joined us. Hello, Regina. Regina, when we started, we introduced ourselves and where we are right now, and our relationship to the land we're on, as well as our involvement in the production. Would you like to give an introduction? The muting is being silly. We will figure it out. We will figure it out.
No, I have it. Sorry, it's because I joined the I joined the conversation, but through Facebook, and I was watching. No, anyway. So when you would start talking, I was listening to Facebook, and so I have to go all the way and stop. Anyway, so you were saying I introduce myself, and yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So hello, my name is Regina María Gutiérrez Bermudez. I am from Colombia. I am here doing the PhD in performance studies. Right now I am in Davis in the housing for graduate students. It's called Solano Park. Yeah, I don't know if that's fair or something else.
That's perfect. I was asking, and Tori was asking about burial and the image of the earth in this piece. If there's anyone who hasn't spoken yet, if you would talk a little bit about the process, or how you were thinking about earth or burial as you made this happen.
I think for me, in terms of like the physical location where we were working on the piece, I mean, I'm in Southern California, and I'm currently living at home, where I've always lived my whole life, and so to be doing that on, like, when I was working outside and filming certain things or thinking about it, I was doing it on the grass and in the area that I've lived my whole life, and so that sort of changed the way that I looked at it. It was interesting because normally when we're performing, we might be on a stage or something like that, but to be doing it in a place where I'm living with my family, and for all of us to be doing it in our own living situations, it definitely impacted my relationship to the character and to her experience, which I thought was interesting because I've never had that experience before. So.
And Xinyi, if there's anything you would like to say, I know that you need to leave soon. So how are you thinking? What was your experience in this production?
Well, I think, I mean, to me, it's a very special experience because especially this is my first time like stage managing and it's all online. So yeah, but I really like enjoy working with everyone as we went through this like whole process. So yeah, I want to like thank everyone in the production. Yep.
Thank you all for those insights. Maybe it's fitting now to turn to something Veronica brought up, which is this Mapuche lullaby, and the lullaby and the act of singing and the voice. So we're curious, and Tori, please feel free to jump in here to clarify, how are you thinking about voice in this process? And specifically, maybe if there's a way to think about the role of the Greek chorus and the voice there as well. How is the voice part of this, and the voice as lament, and specifically women's voices doing the work of lament? There's the keen, the outcry, that sound of the body in pain and mourning. So where is this here and in your creative process?
Perhaps I can ground. Oh yes, go.
No. I'm asking because my connection was cut, so I'm just asking. No.
The question is a general one, and it's about the song as the song that my ears don't recognize and they want to, right? There's a wanting to understand that chorus or that refrain that I think is repeated. But I also paid attention to a lot of other choruses and a lot of other voices that were repeated. I think of the first moment people break out of their homes. It's around minute 8, second 43. And they go out kind of individually, but together, and each one is saying different, there's different refrains echoing, including phrases such as, this is a thing that cannot be done, but it must be tried, right? Or help me, or it's no shame to bury your brother. So those are also elements of a kind of chorus that I hear echoing not only across different characterizations of the voice of Antigone, but also across different spaces and bodies, and also ancestral traditions and cultures. So thinking about the chorus as both a tradition of Greek theater, came from Greek theater, but also you all are doing something new with it. So making that explicit.
I mean, I think that's right. And I mean, I think at the heart of even when we were going to do this as a live show, there was already the idea we had of displacing the traditional Greek chorus to the protagonist of Antigone, because there was something about Antigone's immense an expansive sense of grief and injustice being uncontainable. And so we wanted to have an ensemble of Antigones even in the live theatre show. And so the chorus would exist in Antigone, and the actual voice of the chorus would be a single voice. Maybe an actor that would change, but it would be a single voice. So that was already living. But then, of course, in this version, it became a matter of practicality in order to strip the play right back to the experience of Antigone. And so it emerged, this idea that the whole thing, in fact, is the chorus of Antigone's lament, or her pain, her grief. And so we were working with this idea of chorus, or another word that we've been using is a polyphony. How do we create then a polyphonic work, a compositional polyphonic work that works with this idea of the chorus in many, many different ways? Not only vocally, that different people share the same voice, not only sometimes they come into unison, not only that, but a sense of actually the psychology or the emotional experience of this character, this person of Antigone, travels through a collective of bodies who are not together, who are all isolated, but somehow none of them hold this experience, but they all share it, and it moves through them. And you know, it was an observation that Margaret made jokingly to me kind of during the process of saying, oh, well, yeah, the chorus is always so boring in a Greek tragedy, and we were kind of finding ways of how to cut it out, basically. And then actually in this scenario of COVID-19, everyone isolated, everyone in lockdown, actually the chorus loomed into focus as the most important thing of all. This potential to be a collective, to gather, to be together, to come together, that is lost to us currently.
I remember during the process, I brought a song, an alabado, it's called, from a tradition in the Pacific, Atlantic and Pacific in Colombia, which is from Afro tradition. And it's an intense expression of mourning, but at the same time spoke or asked for justice, and which is, I think, an important word in this process, at least the way I take it. Justice versus injustice, and the law, and whose law is the law, somehow, the position of the law. So unfortunately, I couldn't sing the song because I contacted the composer to ask to sing this song, because I think it's the right thing to do. But anyway, that song connects me with the experience, the physical experience, and the sound of mourning. That it depends of your landscape, your ancestor, your traditions, your life's experience, and it comes from the inside, really deep. You know, like you are not singing, you are not performing, you are just expressing through sound in a different way. So I think I took that as well, even if I couldn't sing the song or perform the song, the alabado. I just carry that inside feeling, and how to also honor a lot of women and indigenous women that suffer a lot of violence. And I guess, I don't know if Veronica have mentioned, I guess, the disappearance, that it's a huge way of control in Latin America, and I guess some other places in the world, but at least from my experience and from what I know, it's a way to to control you, you know, the impossibility to find the body, the impossibility to touch the body, the impossibility to say goodbye, which is something that leaves us with an uncertain and like without, oh, sorry, I can't find the words, but yeah, I feel like I put that into the performance even without couldn't sing the alabado in terms of sound, because yeah, it's also a dimension of the body.
I wanted to also thank you for all that you've said, beautifully articulated. That one of the things I also think about in my practice is sound making as it's related to the body and to authorship. And I did want to mention in the audition process, one of the things I asked for everyone to sing. And it was surprising to me how many people, and some of them are in this cast, who didn't initially audition because they've been led to believe they can't sing. And there is something to be said about the ideas of the chorus as they speak to folk traditions and civil rights, and how within those traditions the offering is that everyone can sing, and within the sound making practice you find a way where you can enter. And what I thought was really beautiful in thinking about this polyphony, which is something that Sinead and I were talking about way back in January when we were thinking this was going to be on the stage, was that it was an offering for everyone's voice to be recognized in a non-hierarchical place where the voice isn't a commodity. It's not, you're not stepping forward because you can, do jazz hands and grin, but it is an opportunity to bring your body forward and be in community and in space with others, which is really important. And I think everyone was able to embrace that and offer it with such generosity, the cast and everyone. Yeah. I'm done.
Well, I must say, what you've brought forth, Margaret, is has so much resonances with a lot of the things I'm interested in as well. The hierarchies that come out of, particularly, I would say, the Western classical tradition, and how certain sounds relate to each other, and how certain sounds are prioritized above other sounds and certain ways of sounding, and a preoccupation with sounding good or sounding right, or being correct in one's sounding. But one thing I love, I think, is there's an invitation here to follow the sound and follow it spilling out, and becoming excessive and becoming larger than you are. If we think about the voice as a hand, and the holding of hands that we cannot hold right now, or an embrace that we can't have with each other right now.
I think there's also something, even though it's gone and it doesn't exist in the piece that we've made, but it certainly began there with this idea that it's a Northern Irish poet. And at the beginning, Margaret and I, we read all the versions that were around when choosing a version of Antigone to work with, or a translation, and we both liked this one. I mean, I have a strong connection with it, obviously, because it's Northern Irish, and I think there's a kind of similar relationship where language or accent or voice is politicized, or you can tell where someone comes from or their class, particularly in a kind of Anglo-Saxon world, Irish world, you can tell where their class or where they're from their accent. And there was something for me important about feeling like this very ancient text, which I can't read ancient Greek, and how do you access the words really? How do you really contact the original word? And given I couldn't access that through the Greek, the ancient Greek, Margaret neither. I suppose I felt that I had a kind of way in, at least if it was Seamus Heaney's voice. And I also thought, well, actually that kind of cadence sits very well with an American voice, actually a kind of Northern Irish voice and an American voice. There are similar cadences that I felt that actually that would sit in an American cast. So it's a bit of a side note. It's not the be all and end all, but it's interesting to think about that component for me right here, right now. I haven't really thought about it much, but it's remembering that connection that was ages ago, that doesn't really prevail in the piece, but mattered once.
Well, I think it really does. Is actually, and I think it's also might be useful to both acknowledge and to mention that we found a sort of the highway between these, when they really are sound making traditions, because also way back in January we talked about bringing in Dala Breathwaite, who is a hip hop musical theater artist, and asking to do a sound making and using the words workshop with the cast, which I think helped them to also see where these sound, and they are really sound making and traditions of civil rights and place making, where they have a conversation with each other. And I'm also moved to sort of acknowledge somebody who's on this in this group with us, Katharine Fitzmorris, who is my mentor and teacher, and most of the people that are students of mine have explored Fitzmorris voice work, which laid my foundation for thinking about sound and culture and ways to make that part of the pedagogy of teaching acting that is not related to Western sound making. Just acknowledge that.
I'm so curious, given Margaret and Sinead, what you've said to the cast. What was it like to put these words in your body and to find your way in through your own voice?
So, thinking about the very beginning of the process and how during rehearsal, sometimes we would lay on the ground and just breathe into the body to kind of access certain parts that we normally don't go into unless there's something going on that takes us there. And I think that was kind of crucial for us as a chorus to experience, but also individually, because, we were able to locate in our bodies where a lot of this tension stems from. And, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it's really hard because it's draining. It's just like the feelings we were working with, like mourning and the idea of burying your brother illegally, this illegal act. I think it was very challenging because again, those places, we normally don't choose to go there. They just kind of happen. So I think that, also relating to what Margaret was saying about, the voice and the relationship to the body. And, I've just taken your class, and I think that it's very important to find that correlation, because you know, as I was watching the film, I was thinking that um, sometimes in certain cultures, mourning is actually silent, but what is general is kind of the biochemical reaction in the body. That's something that whether there's sound or not, there's something that happens in the body that changes you when you go through an experience like this. So yeah, it was definitely something.
Perhaps another way into this question, something that I work on in my research, which is with Syrian refugees who compose life worlds by making everybody brother and sister, is this chorus that you all share with us and offer on minute 66, second 33, in this refrain of "Help me bury my brother," and it echoes this question also of the biochemical relation in your body that changes you, right, Olivia, that you were just speaking about, but in relation to this pursuit of burial. And I guess I wondered, as you spoke the word brother, what became your brother?
I think there's certainly a sense of solidarity that we should always have in mind, especially in these cases where, I don't know, like thinking again of this idea of trying to bury a body and how this can be forbidden. I was just watching yesterday a documentary of some workers in Scotland that they refuse to repair the engines of jets that were used to bomb La Moneda, that is like the palace of government in Chile for the dictatorship. And I thought about that, like about solidarity and how they became our brothers, because they did like a tiny action that then echoes and like had an effect on people in Chile that were struggling against dictatorship. So thinking again of Antigone, brother or sister, become everybody that now is struggling with that, especially in the crisis we are going through, where there's like a lot of governments that are more interested in their economies instead of like the people. I think brothers and sisters are all the people who are right now struggling with unfair and fascist governments. And to me, this play had a strong political and critical layer as well. And voice and sound making was for sure related to how our voice can be also be a way of, what was that? It was a way to stand up for a cause.
I think there's also something about Antigone's experience is of something being done to her, that she experiences as immensely unjust and deeply wrong. And she has a sense of someone else's will is imposed upon her, and she is powerless when faced with that. And so there's something about the act of Antigone in the play is a seizing of agency in a situation where she has no agency, and she's been robbed of all her sense of power. And so she does this act in a gesture of recuperating something of her own agency, her own power, and absolutely defends her sense of values.
those are very difficult questions to answer somehow, because brings a lot of different memories, relations. In my case, so when you were asking about brother, I have a particular relation with that word, and even it's in Spanish, because there's another layer there. Like my world, my life experience, my thoughts are in another language, so I have to travel, or I don't think about translation, but like just travel or find my way to live in the different language, and connect that to myself. So, because at some point when you are learning or speaking in a language that is not your native language, you feel that you are not saying what you want to say, because sometimes words are not enough, or the words that you're looking for, and you can find them. So I think that was part of my relation with language in this way, besides the technical part of like finding the sound of the words. So where every word resonates and why, but not a why because I wanted to try to find a reason, but a why of like of the feeling that every word brings in terms of how I experience the word, because it's very different if I pronounce or translate the text in Spanish. It brings something different, even if it's kind of the same. So part of that was my journey with the language, and using the exercise that we did on during rehearsals, which were not directly to think about words, but they were like a ways to access to words. And at some point I got very anxious and like with my pronunciation, and then everything disappeared, you know, like all the connections I was bringing or developing or things. So I have to forget about it. And once again, this thing about like the right thing to do, the right way to speak, the right words to say, I have to forget about it and just connect and find my way again to connect with the process, with the stories I've been carrying, with the landscapes I've been carrying, and just inform or connect that with the words I was using, which I think they are very related in so many ways.
This idea of travel to the words, that makes a lot of sense to me. And perhaps I can offer a lame segue to some of the questions that are happening on Facebook as we travel our attention to our audience on Facebook right now. And I think we've answered, we've gotten a little bit around these questions, but just to make them explicit, we have a question from Tara. Thank you, Tara. She asks, I'm curious how the directors worked with the actors and how the adaptation process from the original script to this filmed distilled version happened. And finally, how did the editing process work? So a little bit about the how of the script and the video that we watched.
Oh, and Margaret, I think you're muted.
So, Sinead, do you want to start with rehearsal or script, or what would you?
Maybe I'll start with script.
Okay.
It's nice and simple. That's how our roles work. I do the simple stuff, Margaret does the hard stuff. No, the script in a sense was done prior to rehearsal, in that we just went through it with the scissors, and we just really just stripped it back to, it was 6 pages of little isolated bits of the verse, and we still had voices of other characters left in the script, but we basically said in the back of our minds, it's always going to be Antigone speaking, but we kept the format that these are Creon's words, these are the chorus's words, these are Himon's words, but in the end, all the words would be Antigone's. But some of the words in the play are, that in our piece, are words from other characters. Not many, but a few. But so we went into rehearsal with a really honed 5-6 page super edited text, and we only worked with that. And then as rehearsals went on and time was running out, we chopped it down even further.
I like that. Time is running out. I think it's one thing is might be interesting to note is that I think towards the end there is a chorus, that body lying out there decomposing actually is one of the final lines of the original text. And I really felt like it was a great place to start. And in my mind, and I don't think I've really articulated this, but in my mind, what I hope we'd be able to point to is that body out there is really the body politic. It is thinking about capitalism, quite honestly, and that the decomposing of that is poisoning our humanity. So I just wanted to articulate that. And in the room, we kind of came up with a way of working, I think the first 2 weeks with actors. Sinead is in London, so Sinead, we would talk in the morning, and I would say, you know, this is what we did, and this is how we did it, and we would kind of negotiate what we would do next in the room with the actors, but really thinking practically. We've kind of focused on this idea of voice work, which Olivia talked about, being on the floor, sound making, thinking about the body and the experiences that are already in the body, and connecting them to moments in the play, like the burial, or this idea of betrayal. Where do those things exist in the body? So not saying now we're going to do the moment and everybody know your lines. It was more about let's move and breathe and make sounds. And then when we're ready, turn them into words as you find useful. Or maybe those words remain just sounds, like you hear all these lovely kind of uses of nonverbal utterances, which I'm really interested in as a narrative, a way of making narrative. And then there was another part, Sinead, after we got videos back, what did we do next?
Yeah, we just, I mean, I think it's important to say that actors were sent off with tasks to film stuff. And sometimes it was, can you film this in this kind of scenario? Can you do this task? Sometimes it was prescriptive. And sometimes it was, here's these 3 verse lines, do something. And then in that rehearsal slot, they would come back, they would upload them. The blessed stage management would organize it on the drive. This project could not have happened without them and their impeccable organization, because there were so many files, and they kept everyone in order and got a system, and it was superb. And so then Margaret and I would watch them back every day, 8 hours apart, talk about them, see what was interesting. And Margaret just began to build edits that she would send to me. We would talk about that, and that was the process.
And I think in the last layer, thinking about, I think one of the things we missed is sometimes we would get work back, and we would feel like maybe if we talk to the actor about the moment in the play and then ask them to re-record, they might consider it differently, but it was never, you know, like say it this way or anything like that. And in editing, I first started out with just a straight, like, this happened, this happened, this happened, then she, you know, hung herself, and that was the end. And I thought to myself, it's not actually my aesthetic to work that way, and I wondered why I was trying to do that to myself. So I said to Sinead, quite literally, I'm going to take a left turn, and I'm going to start looking at this through a completely different lens. And that, I feel, for me, was where I really let each actor's own work kind of very influence what was going to come next. So, and there's, you know, I can't tell you, or I could tell you, but it took quite a bit more than 100 hours to edit, and more than 800 videos, and I looked at every single one. And doing that, I was telling the cast earlier, because, you know, all these videos, I know some of them are saying, but it's only 20 minutes, we recorded so much stuff. Each one helped me to see the other one. So we had a person who sent in lots of images of streets with nobody on it. And then I looked at Veronica's hands in the close-up when she's digging, and I can see those sort of idea of that street in her flesh, in her bones, and in her veins. Or Olivia turning, somebody would sometimes get up from the video and I'd be in Olivia's body and say, well, what would happen next? Or what might Olivia say? Because there's actually no text, it's a silent bit. So I said, oh, maybe she would say this, and I disconnect the audio and put it underneath and say, well, that could work, even though I know Olivia's laughing her head off under that mask, because I know her face, but I'm the only person that actually knows that. So those are, I saw that. Thank you, Tara, for asking that question. I saw it.
I think also maybe just to say that that also the process was very fragmented across the time zones, and so it meant that it was very hard to work in flow, or everybody was working in flow, but in their own seclusion, and that really presents a lot of challenges. But we had no choice.
So I just want to say, and so I'd send what I did to Sinead at like 2 o'clock in the morning when it was done, and Sinead would look at it in the morning when she got up, and then we'd talk at 11 o'clock, which is 7 o'clock your time, and we'd go through it and say, well, what about this tweak, or what about that tweak, or maybe if we took that sound and moved it here. So it was still very collaborative, but because, you know, we needed to get it done, and not, you know, I'm the one with the equipment. This is a good conversation to start, and then we would continue it in the morning and say, oh, I hope to get another pass at you before you go to sleep, but if I fall asleep before I send it, you look at it in the morning. Thank you again, Tara.
We have another question from our Facebook audience, and paying attention also to timing. It's 12:18, and so I'm going to start to formulate this final question also as a concluding question for you all. This has been really helpful to think about process and research and practice of mourning and voice and chorus. And the final question is from Olga Logis, and I'll quote it. They say, congratulations to everybody. I really like how the acting was a collective and at the same time a very individual effort. This made me think about the effort of Antigone herself, who is ultimately alone in what she wants to do, even if when she's on stage surrounded by others. So the question is, what was it like to perform this piece in this new way and in the isolating circumstances of lockdown and social distancing? And then I would like to perhaps frame this also through ongoing conversations I know that you all were probably having about the safety of Zoom and the military surveillance equipment that sort of flow through all of our modes of connection at this time. And I'm thinking of a particular scene in the film. I don't know if we have it available to share, but it's the scene of all of you stacked. And it's the moment right as you start to transition from being in your home, socially isolated, to breaking out to bury the brother. The thing you must do, even though you don't know if you can. And so really thinking about performing individually, I can't even imagine developing this process on your own, in which like the only form of communication is through these platforms like Zoom. And what it was like for you to be in this new world of connecting over Zoom, and really giving us a model moving forward of how collective choral, or I think the word you've used before is the civic chorus, can exceed these boxes that they put us in.
If I can, while everyone's thinking of the answer, I want to actually acknowledge two things. Once in the, we had some initial footage when the cast were looking at their home spaces, at places that they might perform, and looking at audio, where light might be useful or might not. One of the images that we got, and this is one of the ones where we looked at them in rehearsal. Regina was the first, made this gesture. And it was it's very evocative to me, because not only was she looking through the window, but I was quite cognizant that if I just do that, this becomes hands up, don't shoot. And I started to see how we could kind of toggle back and forth between cultures, and through thousands and thousands of years, thinking about this as a choral gesture. And then we were lucky enough to bring in Roger Ellis, who's a choreographer in Chicago, and he worked with the cast with very specific idea of choreographing. Its movement sequence turned out to be quite a bit longer. And I'm also going to credit Sinéad, who in passing once said to me, it's quite interesting that they're all in their home spaces. And I started to look at the little side movements that people were doing when they were so-called not on as Antigone. So that was an idea that I just want everyone to see clearly how collaborative this was, even though we were really separated, how we could have these little conversations that built and shifted and changed things. And also I want to, I'll say this really fast, the second time you see that same image, it's shot differently. Before we did it in Zoom, and Roger just called it like regular choreography. And the second time you see it, it's actually in the internet, which I got this crazy idea that we use gaming in this. Why not? Everything else has gone goofy. And Ishan Oz, who is in cinema and digital media, I called her up and said, can we do it in Twitch? And so she was actually the one moving the actors, which kind of makes up a little arc if you think about arcs. That's it. But now actors can talk about how hard it was, because it was hard.
Well, I'll jump in. As somebody who is observing the process and facilitating the process, I really appreciate, I've seen lots of different efforts out there to turn the medium of theater online, and a lot of them fight against the natural constraints that this gives. And I think this project was really successful and really interesting to me because it embraced those constraints so much. It didn't try to pretend that things hadn't changed. It didn't try to pretend that we could do things in the same way we did before. So that's something that I just wanted to acknowledge and say I really appreciated about the process for this and how it was very much embracing that we were all by ourselves and individually, and asking the cast to not just be actors, but to be their own cinematographers and self-direct, watching takes of themselves, like retaking things, noticing stuff. Yeah, like there was a lot of additional roles put on people in these circumstances. Just wanted to point that out.
And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge in that sense of the roles is also our sound composer, our music composer, Lex Kosanka, who's in London, UK, who did the composition and overall sound design, and was assisted by one of the UC Davis grad students, Jennifer Grace.
I think I can't remember exactly the question, but when I think a way to answer it, the process and the difficulties or weeks we faced doing this was my feeling is like from the first day of rehearsal, we kind of started a journey together. And even when we were isolated in different parts of the world and the United States, every time we were together in the Zoom, the way that the rehearsals were set or direct or done make us feel working together all the time. Even if when you have a task, oh, go shoot this. Yeah, but I don't know, I always have the feeling of being together with everybody. And even here, shooting myself alone, like, oh, I don't know, somehow like the presence of the other doing the same inspired me, maybe. So yeah, the feeling of like, okay, let's travel together and see what's going to happen and where are we going, and let's do it until the end. But maybe it's not an end, it's just there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Olivia.
Oh, go ahead, you go. I was just gonna talk about a little bit of the process and how it wasn't necessarily just performing, because you know, we had to figure out what went into the frame and how we wanted to film things, what we wanted in the composition of the picture that we were shooting ourselves in, or we needed, you know, a family member to help us with. I think that kind of like what Regina was saying, we were coming together in this very specific, tight medium through Zoom, and we were doing these things that connected something within all of us, but then we also had the agency to pick and choose what we wanted to do, because more so at the end of the rehearsal process, there was a point where Sinéad and Margaret were like, they just gave us lines and they were like, do what you want with them. You know, go and figure out what can fit with this and what could not. And I think that those little bits of us being together, plus the fact that we had the agency to put our own world, our own mind, and our own vision into this, I think that is part of the magic of what this ended up being, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Veronica, was there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to share that the process itself was pretty crazy in terms of it was full of, I think like all creative process also has a lot of uncertainty, but due to this COVID situation, there was like way more of things we didn't know how will they work. And I think we all were trusting in each other and creating from our experience in this lockdown. I think like something interesting about the process, it was like not a pretentious process. We were not looking for a result. We were not looking for putting all the play inside this film we did. No, we were like, okay, like we have two options. One is do this. We don't know how to, but just do it. And the other option was not doing it. And I think nobody was in that line. And we all were like, okay, like we will do this, but we don't know how this will work, but we're all here. So let's collaborate and let's share and let's go into this adventure, because what can be that bad about it, you know, like it's fine, you know. So it was exhausting, of course, because theater is an embodied practice, it's a live thing, you know. You need to have somebody else on the space with you, and it was weird to think that, okay, like I'm thinking about doing this and I know I'm here by myself in my room, but I can hear others people breathing and I can hear other people moving. So I'm kind of alone, but not actually, like we're never alone. So this virtual setting made me understand that, especially that now I'm so far away from my country, but I'm not that far. So it's interesting to think about distance and how we engage and how do we have agency from a distant place, you know. So yeah, thank you everyone. I'm really happy and really happy to share this experience with you all.
What a lovely way to end our conversation together. And I want to thank my collaborators, Tori and Anuj. Anuj, who's been facilitating the Facebook aspect of things. I would like to thank Margaret and Sinéad for your work in this process. Joseph and all the people who were part of the crew of this project and the facilitation and coordination. And thank you, Arden and Veronica and Olivia and Regina, for your work and your voices and your bodies in this production, and for joining us here. And thank you, Katharine Fitzmorris, for being here as well. And thank you to the Facebook Live audience. Thank you for your flexibility, and what a joy to talk with you all about this. And I invite everyone to watch again and to look for these things. What's that, Margaret? I'm gonna unmute you. It's still muted, Margaret. Yes.
Because now it's open, so you can send it out to people that might not have signed up and give them an opportunity to see your really inspirational work.
Fantastic. And we'll send out the link again on the Facebook event as well. Hooray. And so with this invitation to travel together, this brief moment we came together, and as a nice reminder that we are kin and we are moving forward in this unknown together, and here's a way to do it, I think. Thank you all again, and be well.